Welcome to Design WIP number 4. This is the fourth time we are doing an event which is exclusive to the Discord community. Basically, what Design WIP is a platform where we, the members of the community, sort of bring together creatives, educators, designers, students, anybody who wants to share what they've been working on or or talk about what interests them. Which in most cases would be valuable to you all. So that's what we've been trying to do the past 3 months now. And today we have Vyasateja Rao, who is the creative director and the founder of Analogy Design Studio in Bangalore. And without further ado, I'm just going to hand it over to him. Today we'll talk about portfolios. And he's going to walk you through a portfolio 101 sort of session. He's been around in the scene for really long, so I guess it's a pretty cool opportunity to learn. Like, even if you're not a student who's been in the industry, I think it's good if you can put in your questions, just drop in your feedback on the chat, just so that we can make it more interactive. Anyway, without further ado, let's hear from Vyas.
Hey guys, everyone. First of all, Sushant, again, thank you for putting this whole thing together. It's pretty amazing to have so many people, in this group, and also the level of interest as well. So just like Sushant was talking about, and I think you guys have kind of heard me rant for a very long time about portfolios, about education, and things like that. I thought it's a good thing to start. I've been building this deck kind of a thing for a very long time in my career. Every time I kind of notice things or I have like certain opinions and viewpoints, I kind of make it a point to put this together and stuff like that. So there are over 200 slides, and I don't think it's appropriate to put everything together in one session. It's just not going to work. I'd either have to breeze through it really hard, or it's just not going to matter where you guys can ask questions and things like that. So I was just having a chat with all the admins today. So we've kind of thought we'll break it up, and Sushant probably is going to figure out a structure on how to make this a little bit more easier. He's a lot better at me at this than I am. So I'll just quickly start. Okay. So a little bit about myself. I've been doing this for quite a long time. I'm currently the creative director at Analogy. And so I started in India, then did my master's in the US, and worked through quite a lot of places like Hong Kong, South Korea, China, Europe, Taiwan, Vietnam. And then these are all the places I've actually worked at. Easy, General Motors, the Research and Economic and Design Lab. I was an adjunct professor at NC State teaching visual communication for quite a little bit of time. Then worked at Quirky. The first job where I got fired with a check that said design SUCS sucks. So if anybody has that sort of experience, don't be disheartened. Life's gonna go on. Design's gonna be there. You guys are gonna be fine. Then I was the lead designer at Casemate, Hypergenius. Then I was the senior VP at Solaris, and then that's some guy with a honk. Sorry. And then I was also a creative director at Portic, and then I started Artifact Design, which is what previously Analogy was known as. So a little bit about me: I'm an avid motorcycle guy. I own 2 motorcycles, rather 3 now. I think I ordered mine last month. And then I think for me, the biggest thing that has been a great learning has just been traveling. I've traveled quite a lot in my life, and that has given me a lot of good perspectives, opinions, and also it's fueled my growth as a designer incredibly over the period of time. Just kind of observing people, how they kind of react. And it's very interesting to see, like, you take a product from somewhere, but then you go to a different place and you see how people react to it, like the buttons are wrong and everything. So it's very interesting to see that culture and then design for it. I'm a huge foodie, and I love traveling, and this is what kind of defines me as a designer. So I just thought I'd quickly put that in. A little bit about what we do at Analogy. So previously, like I said, it was Artifact Design, and then we were a full service agency. So we did everything from end to end, and it was just kind of getting really weird, and a lot of internal frameworks were kind of like getting destroyed. And there was a reason I started Artifact, and there was something that I wanted to build, like the 21st century design studio, which is kind of like a very interesting take on things. How do we talk to clients? Or how do you even convince clients that design is a force to be used in their kind of like business and stuff like that? And we were kind of losing it at some point of time. So 2 years back, we kind of decided to stop and relook the whole model of who we should be. One thing we realized was that we were doing everything with everybody, and that just was not going to work. And so we took a hard decision. It was a lot of money that we had to let go, and it was a lot of clients that we had to let go. But it was still a really good decision, because today I think we're in a much stronger place in what we do in terms of the overall perception, the work quality. Our clients are happier. So I think right now, as an analogy, we focus mainly on industrial design and UX, and mostly on how we can combine industrial design and UX together. It's not two separate verticals, but like kind of putting them together and seeing how it is. We're very selective, whether it's the kind of clients we work with, whether it's the people that we hire. It's all about quality. Of course, it's still a work in progress. There's a lot of commercial aspects in a business as well that you have to figure out. But then we're still working on it. Thanks to everything that's been happening. Not this year, not 2020. I mean, but it's pretty good. We focus a lot on quality, storytelling. We focus a lot on people as well. So hiring is a big part of, like, there's a whole culture deck, and there's a whole different kind of onboarding process and everything. And we like to work on frameworks rather than processes, because processes are something that kind of, according to me at least, it kind of trifles creativity. But frameworks are wide enough where you can have a lot of freedom to do different things. So that's a little bit about an analogy. Again, like I said, quality versus quantity is basically our goal. So if you look at this, there's a very core belief that I have, that we want to be like the special forces. We don't want to be like let's say a whole contingent or a big army of things, right? Like, so there's something that I always keep telling, and I think people who've worked at Analogy or people who've worked with me have heard this many times, that it's very well defined. You have the T structure really well. There's specialists in one single thing on the team. Very small amount of people, really good at what they do, and each person knows how to do one unique skill, but then they also have a whole bunch of generalist skills. And that's what we look at to strive to train or to hire. That's what we do. So overall, the vision is we craft beautiful and experiential physical objects and digital products. So that's kind of like how it goes on. So just to start off the session, I'll quickly kind of give you a little bit of context. And like I said, I've written down a couple of ground rules as well. And this picture is something that I thought would be very interesting to start off with, because this is how, I'm not that old, but this is how we mailed things, let's say back in the day, like 2006, 2007, 2008-ish, when the economy is really crap. But it was like you had to make all these mailers with, at least it was CVs. I was not mailing hard copy portfolios and stuff like that. But just to kind of give you a context, last year alone, we kind of received more than 1,000+ internship and job applications. And then I don't want to tell you how much we hired. It was a very small number. Like, it was like in the decimals. But then it's the reason I put this here is because there's a huge amount of portfolios we get, and every portfolio we do review, every email has a reply. And if it's really good, you'll probably get a customized reply saying that, okay, your work was really good. Unfortunately, something here needs to be tweaked and something this needs to be done. But apart from that, we read every email, and every email we try to reply back because, I think that's just a nice gesture to everyone out there. So I've been meaning to do this for a very long time. So thankfully, like we talked about on Discord and things like that, we have an opportunity to do this. So I'm kind of happy, right? So let's start off. I think just overall, to give you a context, we'll start with some ground rules. I'll quickly talk about the process. Then we'll get into the types of portfolios and do's and don'ts. Okay. So I'm just going to move on to the ground rules. And by the way, any sort of questions, I think if you guys have already interacted with Sushant or put it on the Discord channel, he's going to filter some of those, and then we'll do that after the session, because I want to keep this to a very close 40 to 45 minutes, and I don't want to go above it. Because I know you guys have to do stuff on Sunday evening, or if you don't, still, I want to keep it to 45 because I've got some stuff to do. So, all right, ground rules. I can't show you any examples of portfolios right now because I have put in emails and messages to people and I don't have replies from them because we do need their permissions, because this is being recorded and probably we'll put it up on YouTube, which is again a public channel. So I don't want to go in and do something unethical at that point. But we'll do this in parts. So in the next part, hopefully if I get all the permissions that I need, I will show you examples. I've actually structured that in this way itself. All right. So we'll be looking at basics. We'll be looking at some work reviews, and then also we'll do a portfolio review. But that's again broken into different parts. And Sushant has a really good idea, and the admins, they have a really good idea on how to do this. All right. This is my point of view. This is what I've observed over a very long period of time as to what happens in the industry and what certain things students do. And it's not your fault, because technically in the last year before I was getting out of school, I had something like this, wherein we had a whole portfolio studio, which kind of taught us a lot of good things. And then eventually when you get into the industry, you kind of learn all these things, right? So overall thing, even here, I'm trying to be very clear. There's no right or wrong to a portfolio, right? Just like how there are no good designers or bad designers. So it's kind of like there, but if we do stick to the basics a little bit, I think it'll help. So I'll be going over those very closely today. And then be kind on the DM, guys. Put it on channels, put it on either, Design Rescue, or put it on one of the channels where we do talk a lot about the portfolio thing. So if I can't respond, right, one of the others can respond, or there could be a nice conversation around this. Because I think, overall, we'll have some sort of portfolio reviews at some point of time. So I think that'll be better. All right, so this is kind of like a very simple process chart that I put up here. So I'll explain as and when we go, but I'll just give you a gist of what it is. So before you start a portfolio, I think there's a lot of things that you have to, or there's a lot of time before you start putting together a portfolio, right? So let's say you're starting something, you're a student, you're just starting something to get into design school, or maybe you're a current student and you're in, like, let's say your second year or third year. You need to start networking with people in the industry. So that's one thing that I've actually seen a lot of students not doing. So it's like, people just, when they have a need or when there is a internship requirement, that's when people start getting in touch with this thing. And it just becomes a very transactional overall thing. So that's kind of like the reply you're going to get as well. So you probably get a very custom, not a custom, but a very standard copy-paste reply from a studio, if you're lucky, saying that, hey, we don't have a requirement right now, sorry, I'm going to get back to you. But if you actually network with people even before you make your portfolio, right, if you can bring that as part of your journey, that becomes a huge deal, because then people who are actually helping you with it, which is what the second point I have here is, let's say, if you develop certain mentors, you don't need 10 mentors, even if you have one in the industry, that's more than enough. But then the mentor thing is not that you're going to get a job at his firm or you're going to get a job within his team. It's more to do with his wider network that he can actually spread this across. And if he has that trust with your work, and if he's helped you get from point A to point B, right, he's going to definitely do that for you. Like, so I've done that for a lot of my people that I think have been good and, have a great potential, even though they're not there yet, they're still kind of in that zone. I've actually recommended that them to a lot of my networks, even though we've not had requirements within analogy. Right. So the next step is, creating a spine, and I'll go into detail of what a spine should have within a portfolio, right? And then creating the story, and then the job persona thing is something very interesting, and I'll talk to you a little bit about what it is in detail. So after the job persona, then we go to the application. This is something I call the other side. After application, we'll get into self-awareness. Okay. Which is, again, I talk a little bit about what you guys can do in terms of your portfolio before you send it out for feedback to your friends or to any other industry mentors. And then this one's very interesting. It's called the other side, which is like the studio's or a company or a corporate's view on how they see your work, right? And the last one, obviously the last two is, You got to be patient, and then you dig in for the long haul to kind of like go through that, especially in scenarios like this right now, right? So basically, with the network thing, like I was talking about, get in touch with people that inspire you, right? Like, so if you are following a certain, studio or a company or a certain individual has been posting some really inspiring work, and you kind of relate to that work, and you think like, hey, you know what? If I was going to do this project with this guy, then I think this is going to be great. I think you should get in touch with people, and then and be genuine at this point of time. You could just be, don't have to praise them a lot, or you don't have to tell them. It could just be very simple LinkedIn message that could just go out and say like, hey, I really admire what you do. Is there a way that I can actually, stay in touch with you and just kind of work through how you do your work, and then if you could give me a little bit of feedback on mine, I think that would be great, right? So that would be the first thing. And then second thing is, you can also identify certain firms and companies that you really want to get into, right? Like, so let's say you want to get into Astro, or you want to get into RK's design, or you want to get into, I don't know, some XYZ studio, or you want to get into PNG at some point in time. Then start contacting firms. Look at LinkedIn. Look at the people there. Look at the decision makers, right? Senior designers, design managers who have hiring capabilities. Contact these people, or even contact just regular designers and say like, hey, I'm looking to work with you guys. Is there a way? What's the best way I can contact, or who should I contact? And if it's like very straightforward messages like that, I think people respond to it. I've had a lot of people respond to me when I was young, and that's how I'm telling you guys this, right? But it has to be not like when you're searching for a job and then you send that message, and a day after that you'll be like, hey, here's my portfolio. By the way, do you have a job? That's just going to be shallow. So don't do that. Like, do it well in advance. Network. The whole point of networking is to build communication and build trust with other people, and it's not the whole focus of getting a job. That's not the point, right? So again, like I was saying, mentors. You need to identify and contact a few designers who you think can guide you through this whole process. So this is a little tough. Don't get disheartened. A lot of people don't reply, but I've had the fortunate thing of like having really good mentors throughout my career, and that's the only way I've kind of navigated and grown as a designer. Also, I've had a lot of good opportunities come by just because these mentors, I stayed in touch throughout my career with them, and it was really satisfying. And a lot of clients at Analogy, the early clients were through my mentors as well. So it's very important. It's very important. At least even not now. Look at the big picture. It's a very small industry. Have mentors, or have people that you want to stay in touch with. So what I talk a little bit about a spine is, this is what the overall length of your portfolio is going to be, and what is inside the portfolio, and what each of these categories are also about that, right? So what we do when we do a case study, or when we want to put up a portfolio project on Behance, the first thing I have Arun do, who's our industrial design lead at Analogy, is, or even Joel, who's the visual design lead, is like, hey, put a spine together. Let's see what you have. So a spine is nothing but, if you've done UX work, you'll see like, it's basic wireframes. But even before that, it's more like you putting like a storyboard together and just writing what the slide is all about. It could be like, okay, cover slide, then I've got like, hero shot, then function slide, and then storyboarding, and then project 2, 3, like that. So that's what the spine is. And you should write this down. This is not something that you do in Photoshop or in design. Use a notebook, use a pen. And I think that's very important for you to go through. So this should be not more than 20 pages in total, right? It includes your cover page, your contact page overall. And I'll tell you why, because you have not more than 10 seconds to impress somebody. And I'm not making this up, because like we get close to an average of 20 to 22 portfolios every day, right? So if, let's say somebody's looking at it, if Arun's looking at it, he's not going to go through 22 because he's got a whole bunch of tasks in a day, right? So imagine the 22 piles up till the end of the week, and then the HR person is like hounding him or hounding me or hounding Joel or somebody like that. Say like, hey, I need to reply to these people. What is your opinion, right? So he's literally going to breeze through your portfolio. So 20 pages. If you can't convince somebody within 20 pages, trust me, you're not going to convince them with 80 pages, right? Quantity is never going to be, except at Amazon or the cow, nothing else is going to work here, all right? So don't do more than that. Pay a lot of attention as to how you structure your spine, right? Like that's basically, you having to figure out what you're going to present to your audience, right? So it's very much, the portfolio is very much for your audience. It's not your point of view. It's not your ego PDF. It's not like talking just about you. Completely take that out of your head and think about who actually is viewing this, because it's kind of made for your audience. Otherwise, there's no purpose of a portfolio that is going to be there, right? So it's very important that you change your mindset and you look at it in that way. It starts at that. So that's the reason why I put this at the very start of the presentation here, right? And then comes the story part. So the story, I think, is built basically on showcasing a personality. And I'll talk a little bit about how you can do that. Skills, right? So again, it doesn't matter that you are the best design thinking person out there, or if you know business strategy, or if you know design strategy. It depends at what level you are as to applying. So if you're a junior designer and you're applying and you say like, oh, you know what, my whole thing is I'm really good at design thinking, right? You're never going to get a job. Trust me, I'm telling you this, you're not going to get a job, because nobody's going to hire a junior designer to do design thinking, right? And strategy and stuff like that. It's all about skills. It's where you shine, right? So there is a certain hierarchy in teams, and that's where you fit in. And then as you grow and as you mature as a designer, as you understand, you build your own thinking, you build your own point of view. Yes, you can talk about strategy, you can talk about design, you'll have the credibility at that point. I'm not saying you shouldn't get involved in that, but on your portfolio, on your resume, those are not the strengths I would put there, right? Also deciding where to work. So when I say where to work, the context is whether you want to be at a consultancy or you want to be at a corporate job. So it's very important to decide this straight up before, because your story is going to alter in drastic ways. And I'll show you that in part 2, not in this one. I have almost 100 slides in this one, guys. So be a little empathetic on that. Then identify your strengths. I'll also talk about how you can do that. 4 strengths is more than enough. Okay, I'll give you examples of that. And then what you can do for the company or the studio, right? And then start with best to good. It can't be best to worst. There's no place for a worst project to be on a portfolio. If it's not good, don't put it there. So it's best, good, and that's it. Stop there. So this is something that's very interesting, which I want you guys to kind of think about. So when we look at clients, when we start looking at talking to clients or approaching clients, right? We have something called a buyer persona. So in marketing, there's something called a buyer persona where we talk about a certain client, a kind of client that we want to approach. So we put a persona together, because then when we approach a digital marketing approach, then we can kind of see how we can tailor certain ads or show certain people certain things. Or even if we contact them through email or through LinkedIn, we can show them certain projects that we're very sure that they're going to like, right? So similarly, I think you should build something called a job persona, because it's very, very close relation to what I just spoke about, trying to find a client. So it's mainly to talk about who is it for, right? Like, who's this person? Is he a design manager? Is he a creative director? Is he a lead designer? Who's it for? Does he work at an ID studio, UX studio, a multi-service studio, a multidisciplinary studio, or a corporate job? The industry matters. Everything needs to be built. It's like how you build a persona for your, whether it's an ID, a product one, or a UX one, right? Like, so it's very important. What is it about, right? Like, what is this portfolio about? I'll talk about what those portfolios are in the next couple of slides, right? What's the intent of the portfolio? Again, I'll touch upon that a little bit. And then again, I keep repeating this always. Your best project has to be at the start. Has to be at the start. And always, this cannot. There's no room for changing this rule at all. So the bottom line is, you need to treat your portfolio like a pitch deck that you're putting over to a client. Right? It's as important as that. So that's something that you guys should always keep that in your mind. The mindset should be based on that, right? So just a very simple checklist, right? For you to before you send an email, or if you start doing some sort of a thing, first figure out if they're hiring, right? Do you see a job post? Do you know someone who works there? If you do know someone who works there, check their portfolio style before they actually got a job there. Right, so you'll understand what is kind of like a benchmark before you actually apply to some places. Find out if they're hiring or laying people off, because that will tell you the health of the business, and also if you are going to get a response back, or you're not going to get a response back. Because if you don't think of these things and then kind of like whine about it, saying like, hey, these people never reply, not so much. Like I'll talk about that in the other side slides, right? Check if the type of work aligns with your strengths, not your weaknesses. So if they're doing a lot of exploratory work, it's a lot of sketching, it's a lot of sketch renders that's on their site and your Behance and their social media pages and things like that, then, and if you're not good with sketching, then probably you're not going to get a job there. So you either need to improve those skill sets if you're aspirational in that way, or stick to your strengths. Figure out their beliefs and philosophies, like what they do, right? And then there's also certain ground realities. So when I talk about ground realities, I'm talking about, like, again, business health, how empathetic they are towards people. Are they kind of like interested in you? They're not. Are they making enough money? The commercial side. You're not going to be able to find everything, but try to find as much as you can. And finally, who's the decision maker for hiring? So just don't automatically assume that the person at the top is going to always make that decision, because certain things are delegated down. Like, for example, at Analogy, like, most portfolios are reviewed by the leads, and then the final thing, I look at it, say like, yeah, I think this is interesting. They take the interviews, they do the tests, they kind of figure out all that. Only the behavioral interviews, I sit on that. Other than that, I don't get into that. So if you're contacting me, then I think it'll be a waste of your time, because I can only pass it on to somebody, and then it doesn't really work. So that's important. Again, like I touched upon this point a little bit before, decide where you want to work, right? So you guys remember that little survey where I had given you questions and stuff like that? Those are mostly to kind of give you this thing. So it was a light survey kind of thing that was done. That was not very technical. It was not very, scientific, right? It's just kind of like fun having things there. You can go back to the survey and kind of check where you've come in. A lot of people in India do give a lot of importance to money, so I do get that. But then in that, I kind of put that on the corporate side, because that's where you're going to get paid more. A consultancy at a studio is not going to pay you a huge amount, because again, there's a lot of layers in a studio because they're external clients and things like that. So go check it out. I think it'll be interesting for you to figure out where you are. But you have to make that kind of decision before you start your portfolio. Whether you're going to go corporate or you're going to go consultancy. It can't be either ways. You're not going to fit a portfolio either ways, right? It's the same thing that I was telling you about Artifact and Analogy. We did so much brand, packaging, space design, everything. It doesn't work. It doesn't work because your initial pitch at the start, right? Like, hey, what do you guys do? We do space, we do UX, we do UI. It goes on. I mean, I can talk for 15 minutes, right? So it's very important. Here's how I think the industry is structured. Again, this is my point of view. I'm sure somebody else out there might have a different point of view, right? So I believe this is how most of these companies is structured. So there are experiential agencies, design studios, full service consultancies, and then management consultancies, right? And these are all the different disciplines that fall under these kind of things. Maybe at some point of time, it's either online, or I'll put this deck on one of the Analogy blogs. You guys can refer to it again. Just in the interest of time, we're not going to read everything out here. Okay. So what I did was I took all these ones in there, and then I kind of started defining attributes for each of these. So if you're kind of looking at a very kind of eclectic, multidisciplinary approach, then take one of these disciplines, and you can look into that. If you're looking at something very niche, right? Like, so if you're an industrial designer, or if you're a UX designer, then yeah, you got to focus on that. So the whole point I'm trying to make here is, if you're an industrial designer, your portfolio needs to be an industrial design portfolio. It doesn't have room for photography, knitting, or I do also fix buckets in my free time. It doesn't make sense. Just stick to your core thing, and that's basically what you have to do, right? So there are also mainstream ones. So these are all the different industries which would fall under the mainstream thing, and these are the technical ones. So if you're very technically oriented, there's nothing wrong as a designer not to be technical, right? So make sure that you figure out your strengths and you go there. There are aspirational levels. A lot of technical people say, like, I want to unlearn all this and I want to become this. That's a decision you got to make, because if you want to unlearn, it's going to take a lot of time. So make sure you figure that out first, right? And these are some of the questions that you can ask yourself, saying like, what are you aiming to convey to somebody? What are your success metrics, right? So in a job persona, there's very important to have success metrics. So your portfolio is going to be this, this, and this. Don't make it a 20-page success metrics, but like maybe, 4 or 5 really important ones. I'm going to have great communication in my portfolio. I'm going to show extremely good, like ideation. I'm going to show great idea generation that I could actually do. Again, this is all connected to your strengths. So you really got to focus on that. And then what is the benchmark for you to succeed, right? So have reference portfolios that you really, really like. But then you've got to rate those reference portfolios based on these success metrics, okay? So it can't just be something that's random. Who are the ones that are going to look at this? What are the limitations of your portfolio, right? You got to figure that out. What's the timeline you're going to finish this in, right? And then the last one is very important because if you put an hourly rate to how much work you're going to do on your portfolio, at the end of when you finish your portfolio, just look at that. That number is going to stagger you because that's something a lot of people keep doing. It's just like, you go back and reevaluate, but it's not more a focused reevaluation where you've got a certain goal you're going to hit. It's more like, I'm just going to go tweak my portfolio right now because I probably have to apply to an internship. They've probably seen my old portfolio. I'm going to freshen it up. Don't do that. It's just pointless. Right? So the next one in this thing is, when you're applying, what is it going to be? Right? So here are some of the things that are very, very, this is personal. It's coming from me again. We get a lot of emails saying like, hey, hi there. I was checking to see if you had an internship position open so I can send you my application. What's the point of the email? Like, you don't get replies to actual applications, right? But then you just send something like this. No one's going to reply back. Just apply. If you don't apply or don't apply. Hey, Akshay. And then the other point is don't apply on any social media channels. It's just send a professional email, right? Don't apply something to someone on Instagram or on LinkedIn. Like on our LinkedIn, our BD guys are there and they don't really care about who's applying for the job. So a lot of emails and applications don't even get to the HR people or the actual people who review portfolios. Right? So you don't know who's looking at those. So always send in an email, right? Don't do the social media channel thing. The other thing also I was mentioning, don't contact the CEO, the founder or design director thinking it'll be a quick decision. Then make that decision because they're right at the top, right? They're not. They're going to delegate it to somebody. Always, ask for their advice. You can always ask them like, hey, who should I contact in your company because I'm trying to get a job or something. But just go through the HR or go through the hiring manager. It's going to be a lot beneficial for you guys. We've had this happen at Analogy, so that's the whole reason why I put this up. Don't cold call or show up uninvited with your dad or mom, right? It's the worst perception you can have bringing your parents into the studio. Like your internship is kind of like you getting out off your house at 18, going and doing something for yourself, where you're kind of showing that you're dependent enough that you can figure out your living, you can figure out things, stuff like that. So don't do that stuff. Just follow good job practices. Go in when you're invited and stuff like that. It usually works. It's always there. Cover letters, again, I think Sushant put up something very interesting the other day, which I think is great. Don't send in a generic cover letter that 1,000 others from your school would send, right? And don't send out any cover letters that are very cheesy. We got one that was very interesting, which had something, it was very weird. It said, I'm very interested, I'm like wet clay and I want you guys to mold me. It was so kind of cheesy. It was just kind of like, no, this guy, no. So that person became the clay guy. So don't become a guy. Don't send out. Keep it very simple, straightforward, and keep it genuine. Okay. So I've seen a lot of copy paste emails. They don't work. You gotta put in a very genuine email because people can read that, and it's not going to be easy. Okay. Don't send just a resume and embed a portfolio link. Right. So most of these links don't get clicked on because again, it's a matter of time. Always attach a PDF. You can keep a very concise PDF and then a very, you can have a website that you can have a lot of portfolios and you can have a Behance link, or you can upload research separately. You can upload sketches separately, but always hyperlink it into the PDF with a button or something like that, which kind of clearly tells them where to go. Right? If they're interested, they can always go and click on it. Right? Also, don't keep your resume as an image inside your portfolio. And I'll tell you exactly why. Because when you have a resume separately, right, and that email is copied to your HR manager, the HR manager keeps it on record because they are obligated to keep that as record. Whether it's a corporate company or a studio, they have to have that. That's part of their metrics, right? And then they usually forward the portfolio over to a design manager, right? So it's an extra page on your portfolio, and the design manager really is not going to care about your resume. That's going to get screened by HR because they'll have job requirements already submitted to them. So just understand that process and don't generally do that. Keep your portfolio, keep your resume separate, right? If you're applying as an intern or a junior designer, again, don't focus on huge jargons, big titles, strategy, this, that, and it's really not going to get you to the door, because it's what I'm trying to tell you is something very objective, right? So it's about the job you're applying for, right? If it says, junior designer or a designer with a 1-year experience or just an intern, right? They're hiring you for a certain reason, which is going to be you have awesome 3D skills, or you have great idea generations. You've got a fresh perspective on how to do things. So that's basically what it is. Okay, don't talk about your frustrations or something like that in your portfolio, saying I'd like to change this. Just maintain positivity throughout this. Just say I want to be a great designer and I want to work with you guys. I like your team. That's it. I like the way you guys approach things. Keep it simple. This is personal again. I have nothing against ISU, but I can't take that. I can't see the pages flipping back and forth. It doesn't load most of the times. Just don't use it as a platform. I think it's really, really weird. Don't add a copy-paste email about you, right? Add, like I said, photography, sketch renders, portrait painting, charcoal. I could go on. So just keep it niche. Keep it to your craft. Keep it to what you're really good about. Keep it to your strengths. Right? No one cares, honestly. So just don't put that in there. There's a slide later on which talks about effort versus reality, but still, I don't think you should get there. This is very, very important. Don't be lazy with your work, right? Because I've seen a lot of sketch pages where something is scanned in and you've used the magic wand tool, right? But there's still jagged edges at the thing, and you've really not taken the time to clean that up. And it's so annoying. It's really people will not move forward from that page. I'm telling you, it's just not going to work. So, and it's the easiest thing to spot in a portfolio, right? And you guys are all designers. What do you do when you see something? The first thing you're going to do is find out what something is wrong about it. So if you're looking at a design manager, think about 6 years of frustration that he's looking at. He's going to go for that, like a lion looking for a deer. So you just don't want to do anything like that, right? So that's an absolute no, right? Something at the end is, don't say you need an internship because it's part of your college requirements and I will do it for so many things or something like that. Just say you're interested in working with a company because you want to work there, right? So these details matter. Right. So I was talking to you about the other side. So when I talk about the other side, I'm talking about either the corporate company or the studio thing, right? So they get a lot of emails. So a couple of tips is limit your follow-ups to maybe 3. So there could be 1 follow-up, then maybe after a week you do another follow-up, and then a week later you do another follow-up. If you just don't get replies, there's hardly a chance that you're going to get a reply after 5 weeks, right? So just don't do that. Send genuine emails when you follow up, or even when you contact them like you mean it, right? If they specify it very clearly, don't contact them on social media, like I said. And then don't hassle all the team members. So this happened with us where, and I think, I don't know if he's there, but he did get the job because he was so perseverant at the end. You don't need to contact everybody. Just contact the hiring manager, or contact one person who can get you to the hiring manager. And if it doesn't, if you don't get it, or if you get a reply back saying it doesn't work, ask for portfolio advice, right? Don't sound desperate. You say hey, what do you think was wrong? Not sure you're going to get a reply back, but that's always good to follow. So the next one, just 1 second. So the next one, I'm talking about a little bit about self-awareness, right? So this is why do you need a portfolio for? Have a goal. Is it for a job? Is it social likes? Is it an internship? Is it for your personal brand? Is it for freelancing? Really figure that out. That's very important that you actually figure that out. because the nature of a portfolio changes based on your need and based on who you're applying and where you're applying it for, right? So if we look at portfolio goals, right, like I was looking at who all might be there. So it could be an aspiring student who's trying to get into a school, right, a design program of some sort, or it could be somebody who's graduated and then he's going for his master's or something like that, right? It could be a current student just maintaining his portfolio for internships and sort of things. The first job, and then a junior designer to a senior designer kind of thing. Right? So this is basically what I just talked about. So I'm just gonna continue moving forward here. So again, all of these are covered in. I've created different worksheets. I'm going to talk about that in part 2 with examples once I get permissions. Okay, so bear with me on that one. So there are different portfolio types. So this is what I talk about. I've talked about this on the Discord channel as well. That when you look at applying for a job or an internship or something, these are 4 different ones that you should have categories as, right? So it could be like, oh, you know what? These are my list of aspirational places I want to work at. I want to work at Astro. I want to work at IDEA. Work at Fuse Project, right? Like so. But then you've got like satisfactory kind of things, right? And then you've got hate. I hate to work there, but I know I'm confident I'll get a job. So list that. It's important because it's a whole game of numbers, right? So it's a lot of probabilities and permutation and combination. So have numbers, right? So there's something in what we talk about in our digital marketing efforts is something called a conversion ratio. So in ours, it's like 10%. So if we contact 100 people, 10 of them might become clients. So it's the same thing with your jobs. Like in my career, I did 550 applications in 2007 to get one job. I got one. So, it's a game of numbers. You got to keep hammering that in. And then the last categories is no matter who this is, they're going to hire me no matter what. So I'll keep this list here. All right. So identify this, keep this separately. You can keep an Excel sheet, Google sheet. I don't know, man. There's plenty of apps there. I'm sure you guys know that better than me. So these are some of the things to keep in mind while making a portfolio. So I'll just quickly go on that. First and most important thing in a portfolio is contrast. And if you don't understand contrast, Wikipedia the shit out of it because that's very important. There's a lot of different contexts to contrast. Right? So it could be in a sketch, it could be in a composition, it could be in a graphic, it could be in a 3D render, it could be in an animation. Again, but contrast is something that will make something pop or put something in the background. And if you can master this, all of your stuff is going to look great no matter what. The second thing is a story or a point of view. I'll touch upon what a point of view is later on. The third thing is impact. So how much impact are you going to have with just one page, right? Like it's going to be a beautiful sketch page. And people are going to be like, this guy knows how to sketch, right? So again, thinking, what is your thinking? That's very important. Visual interest. So this is where all your visualizations, your animations, your CGI, all that comes in. And the last one, I keep again harping about this a lot, but you need to learn to condense. Meaning, like take a whole storyboard, make it a small animation, keep enough white space, and just kind of go to town on that one. Just make it, bring the focus, bring the impact. We kind of connect all that to these attributes. So this is very important. So for contrast, again, keep it super clean, easy to consume information. Like, again, I keep saying, choose your battles. You can't like win the war. You have to win the war, not the battle. You can't keep winning everything. You're gonna lose at some point in time. So again, there needs to be an optional thing in there. So that's what contrast is all about again. One of the things that I always advise people is write before you sketch, right? Like, so write your thoughts down before you sketch. List your ideas. Create ideas that can help you see if that's kind of crazy or too crazy. So there's something that we have a scale analogy, which is kind of realistic to futuristic. And there's this whole vertical scale that we line up sketches on and kind of see if it works. But we do that before we sketch. We do that with just writing. All right? And then read it out loud a couple of times. It helps you understand basically where you are. You can apply the same thing to your spine. You can apply it to a lot of different ones in there. There's a lot of things like basic rules of design matter, like composition and white space, negative space, to choosing the right neutral font, right? The text hierarchy and all that matter. But you don't know how to do that, just make friends with somebody in graphic design. So under the graphic things, the things that are most important are not fancy graphics that you actually kind of throw on. It's more about white space. It's composition. It's hierarchy, and then it's alignment, right? So you got to really pay attention to these. So obviously, if you have an object, just put a box around it, and you kind of like define the white space around it. So I wanted to put an example of an existing portfolio, but then I kind of decided against it. I don't want to show anything bad about anybody. So I don't know. I'm not built that way. So I'm just going to keep that in there. So again, try if you can keep it without a lot of text. I mean, I've seen a couple of portfolios that have zero text. It's beautiful, right? It's amazing. Otherwise, you can just add a one-liner, and trust me, I'm telling you, nobody's going to read your text. I honestly can guarantee that people are not going to read it. Only if they're interested, they'll probably go and check it out. Again, when I say less is more, I'm talking about words. So when I talk about words, I always have this theory called words are valuable. So make it count. So don't write paragraphs of stuff. No one's going to read it. So like, let's say if you just have one title and it's like, let's go to war. Nobody's going to take that lightly. So you've got to find out something that's impactful and that can convey what you've done in like a one sentence, right? Like, so it could be something like solving world hunger, and that's it. You don't need to talk anything more because your visuals kind of like will build that story. This slide basically talks about what I told you already. So it's like if you can't convince a potential hiring manager in 10 pages, then they're definitely going to move on to the next one. So don't do 30 pages of portfolios. Keep it to 20. 20 it's actually on a higher level, but 20 is a good limit. It's not too long. It's not too short. So this is something that all of us have as designers. And I think everybody's worked with at Analogy in the early days. They'll remember how we did our projects on the website. We did every single project. And that's because there's this thing called effort versus reality, right? And because you put the effort, you want to showcase that. But you got to make a really informed decision whether it's worth putting on a portfolio. Because if a portfolio is also your brand name, and it's your kind of like it's your signature, right? Like you're putting this thing on it. It says like, oh, this is VT's portfolio. Oh, is this how he does it? And he's the creative director at Analogy. I mean, like, oh my God, this guy just sucks. You don't want that. You don't want to ruin your image at all. So your personal brand matters. If it is not good, don't put it on that. You could have worked on a prototype for 2 weeks. Your hand might have had blisters. But at the end of the day, if it still sucks, just don't add it. Don't at all. This is something that I always tell everybody. So taking advantage of someone is easy. Taking advantage of yourself is hard. So just don't be kind of like very kind of nonchalant about your work. Like actually portfolios speak volumes about how much effort you put in. So it's very important. Don't do that. So you're always on social media and things like that. So you get your inspiration, refer to great layouts, get styles. There's a whole bunch of information. There's a huge amount of references. So when I talk about references, you can understand composition, you can look at layouts, you can look at colors, complementary colors, and you can kind of like, match it with other projects that you're doing. Don't literally rip them off. Don't literally take those. But if you start looking at more and more of these, your head and your mind is going to get tuned to understanding, okay, what are those requirements there and how can I actually put that here? So it's very important that you keep doing that. And just, it's a mindset shift, right? Like, so when you start looking at things like that, so let's say Sushant's recent render on that interior space, right? Like, so figure out what the details are in that. Like, what are the objects? Where has he placed it? Where is that? Why is the pot at the corner? Why is the window behind? How much gap is there? Overall, got to look at all those things and kind of analyze the image. How is the shadow falling in? Where's the light source coming from? What are different textures there? Complementary colors, contrasting colors. Look at all of that. It's very important. Don't be afraid to rework and iterate again. This is there for years and years. I'm not really good. So the whole point of a portfolio is it should help you stand out, right? Not get you in a pile, right? So how do you stand out from the crowd? Which is basically what I talked about, a point of view, right? So point of view could be a unique approach on how you solve problems, a methodology, your visual communication style. You've got some insights, but you've got a very fresh approach of showing them. Maybe it's an animation thing that just talks about all that. Efficient way to engineer things, or maybe even a cultural stuff, right? Like, so you went to China or you went to Vietnam. You don't want to go to China now. I'm just saying, like, at some point of time, you've traveled somewhere. It's a bad example, but let's say you've gone to another country, and then, like I said, you just realize how people use different buttons, and it's a very cultural realization. And you kind of like create a global product at that point of time. It's very interesting to put that in. That becomes a very interesting POV, and that's yours. Nobody can take that away from you. So you can make your portfolio very unique. So I did like Akshay's idea of packaging himself in a box and showing up at a studio, and that's not a point of view. That's just you coming in, showing up in a box. That's it. So again, the other thing is, don't do the usual stuff, right? Research, ideation, prototyping. If you're repeating every single one of these in every single project, what's the whole point of your things, right? So tailor your process to build stories, meaning one project could be ideation heavy, right? And the rest of it is just purposefully you're tuning it down to make sure that ideation is the heavy thing. That's the focus. That's your strength, right? The next one is maybe heavy prototyping that you've done in a project, and you're showing that. So in the overall thing, it doesn't become boring, but you're creating stories at that point of time. So tailor your process to build stories. Don't just drop in process just because it's there. Everybody knows this whole thing: research, ideation, prototyping, validate this, blah, blah, blah. It's just not going to make you stand out, right? So what I mean at that point of time is, like, show it once, right? If you've got one project which has got a lot of sketches, you don't need to show sketches in the next project again. Show something else. Show like how you figured out CAD. What are all the mistakes you made? Show a whole video of like how you actually modeled that out in a fast, like, stop motion thing or something like that. And then choose where and why a certain process step is needed. Don't go by quantity, right? We've done projects where we've just put 4 renders and it's amazing. So you don't need everything every single point of time, because it doesn't become valuable, right? You keep repeating it over and over again. Nobody's going to pay attention to it. After a while, it just fades out. So don't degrade the value of that one. A little bit about yourself, like, when you do cover letters or when you're just starting to do that, your point of view could be something as simple as this: I design dash and dash to, dash fulfill my goal as this in this industry, right? Like, so maybe you want to be a toy designer, or you want to be a packaging designer, or you want to be a consumer electronics person, right? So put it in this way. So you can use this as a template to kind of just kind of create your specialty in what will help you in your portfolio. Okay. So again, POVs to stand for something. It's very important. Don't be afraid to be opinionated. Don't feel that you're going to hurt somebody. Don't say bad stuff, but like from a design point of view, right? If you like cars, you like cars. If you like motorcycles, you like motorcycles, right? If you like toasters, there's nobody who's going to tell you it's bad. So you got to be opinionated, right? I would strongly suggest you guys create a style guide for yourself, right? To start out with some basic colors, maybe one really accent colors, one neutral color, and a couple of background colors, and repeat that over and over again. But it needs to be very small visual elements. It doesn't have to overpower the content that you have. Right? Maybe there's a small yellow dot at the bottom of each of your page. And then, subconsciously, it kind of triggers an affinity with the hiring manager. And it'll be like, hey, did you see that portfolio that I think is really good? Hey, which one is that? That yellow dot that was there on each page? It was that one. Oh, it was that guy. Yeah, I know that guy, the yellow dot guy. Right? So it's very important, but if you overdo it, you're going to become a guy. You need to say like, oh, was that the yellow dot guy? Oh God, you put yellow dots everywhere. Don't do that. But create a style guide for yourself, seriously. It is very random, so I did put that in there as random advice because I just inserted that slide there. If it's a group project, please show what you've done clearly, okay? Because we get, I don't know, it's like, I think you discuss with your friends that you're going to apply somewhere, and then all 4 of them apply at the same time, and all of you have done the same project. It just doesn't go well, because at that time we're like, oh, group project. Okay, we have no idea. It's just not good. We just ignore that project altogether because we don't know your individual contributions, right? So it becomes hard to make a decision at that point. Right? So coming to the title slide, I think you can keep it very intelligent. Don't put like a Instagram sketch filter of your photo with like some frizzy hair and glasses and there's some sort of. It doesn't need to be there. It could be as simple as just a very clean white space, or like maybe there's a color that you've chosen, a background color for your in your style guide. Just bring that up. Name, what's the year, selected works. That's it. Keep it very sophisticated. Keep it very Apple-ish. Or you could. I'm not saying you shouldn't do whatever pictures and things like that, but again, remember your portfolio is full of pictures, right? Like, so have contrast, have something that starts off a little light. So it's kind of like a appetizer for your meal, right? You're not gonna start with like a rack of lamb as your starter, right? You're gonna probably eat a salad. So think of the title slide as a salad. It's something fresh. It's something easy. Just don't overpower people with the title slide. All right. And then here, there's another couple of points I wanted to make, which I've seen a lot in other portfolios. Is there's a title slide, then there's a resume page, a little bit about you, and then there's a table of contents, kind of a portfolio project layout thing. That's 4 pages wasted, guys, because your page of content, you can't click and go to another project. If you can make that, then that page has a purpose to stay on there. Otherwise, you can make that on a PDF, but if you don't want to, because then after that, you're going to go and you're going to put a dark reveal render, and it's the same thing that was on the content page. You're wasting 2 pages right there. Right? What's the point of that? Don't do that. This is something I would advise every single person to do, is invest in a showreel, right? Put that time to do a showreel. I've had showreels that have just been amazing enough where I've approached people, say like, hey, you want to work with us? Right? There's this really good showreel. I forgot the person. I think his name's some Harry something. He was a student. He did the showreel about his process and things like that. It was really good to watch. It was fresh. It was not overpowering, and then it was just that 20 to 30 seconds, and it was great. Like it was very good. And actual photos, go very long way. So really good looking ones. Please don't do the dark, dingy workshop photos. It just doesn't work. But the showreel is something that's very, very important. I think you guys should really look into that. I've seen so many of you do such good videos, animations. I'm sure you can build a couple of storyboards and kind of do something in that. Definitely show your mistakes in your portfolio, okay? Because that's very important. It's something which talks about how you overcame a problem, right? It could be a video or a GIF, and it could be on a web portal or something, right? Because I don't think you can embed videos in a PDF, so it doesn't work. But then you can always put that into a portfolio thing. It's very important. It shows like how you overcame something, and also shows you're very human and you're just not somebody who's just following a stupid process that just doesn't make a lot of sense. Show your skills. Your skills are basically your personality when you're applying for a job. It doesn't mean that you like music, you like traveling. It's not your personality. Like it's basically a skill set. How are you approaching 3D modeling? How are you approaching rendering and things like that? So that's very important for you to kind of show. Also, a vision of where you want to get to, right? But then you can also be flexible on how you want to get there, right? Like you could always honestly talk about like, still figuring this out, right? So you don't want to put this as a text in your portfolio, but it could be part of your project where you could put a WIP project in there, which is really interesting. You kind of say like it's still a work in progress. Follow this here on Behance or follow this here on social media or something like that. I think that's very interesting for you to add things like that as well. Be humble, but be strong. Meaning if you've got all these basics right, then I think the strong thing works. Otherwise, just being strong is just going to be being headstrong. So don't do that. Again, you guys know this better than me. Images are always larger than text. So this is where I get to the thinking part. So I just put a single example of our work. So because I don't need permission to show my work, right? So I have something very biased about this. Like, so there was always, thinking in design before there was design thinking. So just don't get into that design thinking mindset. There's always different ways to showcase that. There's always sophistication. There's always intelligence in how you can showcase thinking. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. And it's not process that gets you there, right? So association and relations created of memories, personal experiences. I'm sure a lot of you ID guys know this. You got to put this stuff together. It shows how you think and how you can relate, right? Like, so it's important because you could draw different sources of inspiration from different places. So thinking is not process, right? Again, I was saying process helps you showcase a unique thought, but it's not thinking. So don't confuse process with thinking. You can create very clear visual associations that help you drive the message home. So this is a project that we did, which is called Bloom for a client. And this is mainly for women. And then we were talking about something where the object was an everyday essential, right? So we're like, what can we relate to? Like, with the woman, like, what is it? Is it a purse, a bag? I mean, and then there was this thing in our branding thing where we talked about, this accessory or this, like women have this little black dress in their closet at all times because that's like a guaranteed essential. So we kind of had a little bit of inspiration, and then some visual mood boards later. We looked at this pleated skirt, and then if you look at a top view of the overall product itself, it kind of gives you that overall idea of relating back to that pleated skirt and how the whole texture of the thing came at the bottom and everything. So use things like that to show how you could relate and associate. And it's very interesting for people to look at that kind of stuff rather than I did this research, ideation, blah, 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 blah. Right? Again, this one you already know. You're generalist enough, but then you're a specialist in one. It's very important to show that in your portfolio. The next one is choosing projects for your portfolio, right? Sushant, I think we'll take another 5 minutes. I should be over with that one. So when you choose projects, right, great projects are usually because you have great problems that you've solved and that are relatable, right? If you've chosen a brief that's something really weird, if you've been stuck in school with some sort of a brief, then figure out another project because, again, it's not just going to matter at that point of time, all right? And like I said, avoid group projects or break it up as to what you've done. Honestly, again, avoid it. And then don't rely just on school projects because what you're taught in school might not be exactly what the industry person is also looking at, right? Or it doesn't match what the studio is doing. So always work on some personal projects. Again, summer, whenever you get off, that's when you have to grind through, whether it's an internship or something like that, and build certain personal projects because you've got all these things figured out, your strengths, your story, your spine, everything's figured out, and then you're putting that portfolio together. At that point of time, you got to push through and figure that out. So just don't rely on your school projects because you just did that. Don't dump that in your portfolio. It just doesn't work. A lot of times, it doesn't showcase your real skills. Like there's one person on the Discord group who I thought was never that good, but then I started looking at this person's work on the group, and it's actually really great. So your school project sometimes will, it's going to make you look like you don't have the skills. Right? So again, like I come into this point of saying identify your strengths, right? Like it could be idea generation, 3D space, visualization, communication, storytelling, and project management. Right. So this is a survey. Okay, I don't know why that's weird like that. Just give me 1 second. So the University of Cincinnati, the DAAP guys, they actually did this, right? So I don't know why, what's happening. Hold on. Where's my screen?
Do you want to stop sharing screen and then go back into sharing?
Yeah, let me do that. Hold on. Yeah, hold on 1 second.
Hey, meanwhile, if you guys are still around, so firstly, I know that you guys are around because we hit 100 full house. If any of your friends couldn't make it to this talk, you can head over to Discord because we have figured out a way to stream this on Discord as well while this is happening. At the same time, if you guys have any questions regarding, of course, how to get started with portfolios, more on the broader spectrum of what's expected from a student portfolio or even like a designer portfolio, feel free to drop that into the chat and I can relay that to Vyas post his presentation.
Okay, guys, I'm just gonna quickly see if I can share this. All right, so you can kind of see what that is. So this was a survey done by the University of Cincinnati at DAAP, and these are all the skill sets that they kind of rated, and it was done as an anonymous survey. But quality of ideas is number one, conceptual sketches. Number two, aesthetic sensitivity, storytelling, 2D rendering, presentation level sketches, 3D modeling and rendering, design research, technical knowledge, graphic design, and prototyping. So this is for people who are just entering, your first job overall. So it's important that you guys understand that it's don't just get into that whole this thing of, oh, you know what, I need to do this and this, and that's the reason why I need to be great at rendering, otherwise I'm not gonna be able to get a job, right? So I'm just bringing the other screen share back up. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, so the thing I was talking about is when you have your key skills, just pick 4 of those key skills. Don't get into too much of numbers, because it's the top 4 that matters. After that, it's just like, it doesn't get that. You can't get into a huge amount of skills in that. So, and you can't keep refining more than 4 skills also. So that's the kind of reason why we do that. So think of these as your projects that you're showing, right? Like, so skill number 1, project number 1, and skill number 1 matches. Project number 2, skill number 2 matches. Project 3 and skill matches, and 4 skill matches. So it's kind of like you match the following, but just align your projects based on these skills. So just an example here is the first one could be all about a certain process. So it could be, if you think of research, it could just be research work. The second could be some sort of a functional thing. So let's say you're trying to fix a certain, you're redesigning a certain mechanism, you could probably do that. Third one could be a really complicated 3D thing that you're attacking, right? So of course, it needs to be part of a project. It's not like a task. So you just don't go model an RDTT on YouTube and put that in there. It has to have an original thought. It needs to have a good problem that you're solving. And the fourth one could just be communication, showing that you're very good at visualization and you're doing some gorgeous render work and things like that. So again, keep these in mind. Have 4 strengths of yours, identify that, and then base 4 projects, right? 5 slides each per project, or let's say you could, be flexible around it, but be very careful of that, right? Yeah, again, this didn't work. So the last thing I wanted to mention in today's call, as per my process thing, is the path. I don't know why this messed up again, but I'm just going to XD and. So this is something I was sketching in terms of like, what it should be. So when you start out with school, again, go with your network, build your skills, right? And it needs to be from year 1. Don't wait till year 3 and things like that. The second thing is figure out what your interest is and what your industry is, right? The third one is through internships, through discussions, mentors, people that you talk to in industry, figure out who are the people you want to work with, right? You need to have a certain list of people you want to work with. And then it's money. So money is not something that you take lightly, because obviously everybody's got bills to pay, and it's a key part of that. But then don't make your decision just based on money, right? So there's a lot of times where I myself have taken jobs which is really it paid a lot. So when I was the like at a VP level, a senior VP level, it was amazing. I got paid a lot, but then the reason I quit was I hardly did any design work. All I was doing was presentations, budgets, figuring out stuff with factories, sourcing new factories, presenting stuff to clients and customers. It's just my identity as a designer was kind of destroyed at that point of time, right? So that's kind of why I kind of went back and said I'm going to start a studio of my own, so I can kind of figure that out, right? After that comes thinking. So this is when you have a very focused viewpoint of, okay, this is what I feel design for me is doing, right? So that's very important. Then there's the thinking part, right? So then, I'm sorry, the communication part. How you take that thought and how you start communicating, whether it's presentations, whether you're doing a TED talk, whether you're doing some other talk, whether you're presenting a portfolio session on Discord, whatever it is. So you got to figure that out. And the last part is philosophy. You being able to articulate very clearly on what your philosophy of design is. How are you looking at the world? You're not going to go and figure out and design the next screwdriver when you do your philosophy, right? You're going to look at world problems. You're going to be like, how am I going to solve immigration? How am I going to solve hunger? So if you look at IDEO, when they started off with like objects and the very, very iconic stuff for companies. And then finally, at this point in time, they're solving world hunger. They're building sanitation for everybody. So it's that kind of stuff. So again, that's kind of the overall thing. And what I've done here is I've kind of evolved that. So as a junior designer, when you start work, again, you could look at all this. This is going to help you a lot. And then this is where, as an associate designer, you could look at this and be great. As a lead designer, you got to figure this shit out before you get there. And then as a senior designer, you can start looking at this one, right? And then as a senior executive, like in a very high level position in design, then you can come into philosophy, right? So again, focus on one thing at one point of time in your life. And I think it's a long game, guys. And design is not an easy industry to survive in. You need to have a thick skin, you need to have a lot of patience, and you need to keep at it. So I think that's where I'll kind of end this. Like I said, again, there's a lot of stuff. Like today, it was, I think, 110 slides or something. I hope this is useful, and hope you guys got some good stuff out of it. In part 2, I'll show you how you can actually take this from theory to this thing. But one thing I would suggest you guys is take this, put it into your work, put it into your portfolios. Let me see before we go do part 2s. Send us a refined portfolio of your things with aligned to your strengths, aligned to your certain basics that I spoke about. Improve the contrast, improve the graphical stuff. Take off like a huge amount of clutter in your portfolio, focus it in, and then show us that version. Let's see how that is. And then, if it gets selected, we'll do the portfolio review around it as well. Okay. So, cool. Sushant, do you want to take over?
Okay, so firstly, thanks a lot for taking out the time on a Sunday and for walking us through such an informative presentation. I'm out here taking notes while I should be taking notes of the questions that are coming in. But that was super awesome. And I'm sure everybody else on the chat will agree to that. There's already people congratulating you on the amount of information that they're able to receive in the past hour or so. So let's take a breather while I let some of the guys write down their questions, any final thoughts that come in, and then guys, I can relay those questions to Vyas in a second. Just before we get to that, just want to thank everybody who's been very interactive on the chat already, who's the team also they have figured out a way to live stream this on Discord while this is happening. And I think it's that collective spirit which sort of, again, amazes me every time I look at this community. So thanks a lot for being here, guys, and thanks a lot for being a part of this. And lastly, thanks, Vyas, as well, for this rocking presentation. I think it also comes in at a pretty good time. The market seems like it's opening up slowly.
Yeah.
A lot of students are also on that internship hunt. At least I know, from a couple of colleges, they're supposed to look for internships in the next couple of months. So I hope it was helpful. All right, guys, feel free to drop in your questions. I'm already going to start the question answer session with some of the questions from the Discord, as well as some of the amazing questions that you guys have been asking in the chat. I'm going to start with something from my end, which is, how many of these rules, or let's say these suggestions, would you be inclined to break? In the sense, if you really, really want to stand out. You said that somebody who reached out with a cheesy presentation sort of got your attention in a way. Because I also want to sort of emphasize on the point that it's your portfolio at the end. Everybody who's doing their portfolio, it's your responsibility to take care of it. And there are no laws as such. There are good practices. There are definitely, from an industry standpoint, you'll get a lot of good information from what's expected. But I remember, Vyas, you said that there has to be that surprise element. You have to catch that attention, right? And if you have a written guide, you're not going to be able to surprise anybody because, if Vyas lays out all the secrets, then you just be like, okay, boom, 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 checkpoint, and I get a job. How would you say somebody who wants to really push his work or stand, or firstly, even we can talk about, is it really necessary to stand out? And then we get into, even after following all the right practices, how do you stand out?
I think the second part that you said was a very good point, Sushant, because it's not necessary at every point of time to stand out. I think if you have the basics right, if you've got like really good skills, like when I look at certain portfolios, and I can see like I actually contacted one of the people that I want to show his work, but then again I decided against it. But it was like if I have the basics set, right, like, and I know that okay, I've got I've got project 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lined up for the year, and I've got this guy available. So there's a little bit of a business thing as well as a little bit of the skill thing. And if I know that this guy can do, he hits, let's say 6 out of 10, I'm just going to offer the guy a job because it's very much easier with working with somebody who's around that rather than going to a level 10, right? Like in my experience, I've always had huge issues with people at level 10 because there's some sort of a superiority complex. There's issues with them being team players, working with others, naming certain files in a funny way when you shouldn't be doing that with a client, right? So it was really funny, but you can't do that with a client. There's certain frameworks and rules within which you got to play in the world. So I would definitely not really ask everybody to stand out. And if you were to stand out, I think number one would just be your work. I just feel like if I look at your stuff at some point of time, especially that gaming controller project, if you just had that on your portfolio and you just sent that over to me, then yeah, you would stand out from everybody else. Because the storyboarding on that was so good, and it was like, you had this different idea of like showing real photos, but then you also had those renders like kind of like right next to it in a contextual way of, oh, you know what, I can put two and two together and that makes it four. So those kinds of things stand out. Like, so even if you stay within the confines, and I wouldn't say what I presented are rules as such, I would say it's more like a framework which you can use to kind of innovate within and kind of tweak it to your strength and tweak it to your style. And style is very important in a portfolio. So I feel that would be more appropriate.
Awesome. Just also important to mention that just adding to your last point, this is like a framework, and since there are a lot of students watching, I would even imagine like first, second year students, this is definitely not taken. This shouldn't be taken in a way that stick to all these things and it's guaranteed success. But if you do these things, your chances are far more higher than somebody who's not doing these things. So just want somebody who's online, who's not aware of how the portfolio thing works. Just be aware that these are just good practices, and of course, the more you do, the closer you get to success.
Yeah, I mean, the best analogy I could give you, and it might be a little inappropriate, is it's like you trying to go and date a girl who's probably the best in the college, right? Of course, if you're going to go after that, you're going to have a whole bunch of trouble. I mean, yeah, you're going to have to get a car, you're going to have to dress well, you're going to have gel in your hair. It's a lot of maintenance. So it's the same thing with the design job. Like, I'd rather have somebody who's reliable, who's good at what he's doing, simple, and just getting to their job and not worrying about 20 different things. Oh, am I going to make it? Some insecurities and things like that. Those will probably end up you getting a job rather than just saying that I do this and this and try to stand out too much. So just being very straightforward and things like that. I've seen a lot of people, and this is global, by the way. It's not just India. These attributes, all of my friends who are hiring managers and things like that, we have a lot of chats about this, and this is probably the most common thing that comes across.
Let's go back to the more tangible things, making a portfolio. We talked about having those, but trying to like do the most in the minimum amount of real estate. So 20 slides is sort of the like a number to keep in mind. Not a rule, but do you want to elaborate more on how does one show process in those 20 slides? How does one show more than 3 to 4 projects in those 20 slides?
So I think again it goes back to dividing your skills and things like that in different projects. So let's say the first one is something, if let's say you're really good at process, right? Like you have this insane ability of storytelling and relating things and things like that. You don't have to do that on every project, because you can convince a person with one good project. So maybe that could be a project one, right? And when you talk about slides, that's something that I intend to cover a lot in part two, where I can take a certain person's portfolio and condense the 8 slides into 2 or 3 slides. A certain example would be to just have a lot of animation. Like I said, if you're taking a whole storyboard, right, it's one big slide. I could actually just condense that into 3 different GIFs, where I could show probably a storyboard, how the product works, and what's really cool about it in one single slide, without having the person go like, oh my god, I'm seeing too many things here. There could be enough white space, there could be enough distinction between it. So it just gets down to the point that you need to really plan your portfolio. That spine that I was talking about, writing maybe like you don't have you have a notebook, you have a piece of paper, write those slides out, write until you can clearly figure out what exactly that is. Don't get into sketching, don't get into a PowerPoint, don't get into Google Slides, don't get into XD, don't get into InDesign until you have that spine completely worked out. Talk to somebody, present it. When you present that spine, right, like it's you realize so many things are wrong, right? When you could probably just talk to a friend, right? If you've got really good friends like I had, who were pretty much complete a-holes, they would just rip me to shreds and say like, this is horrible, I would never present this. And you get like really different perspectives from your friends, right? Like, just being real, just hitting you. It's like a machine gun going through a paper wall, right? Like you just get so many holes poked through. And just doing that, and then getting into 1 or 2 iterations of your digital version, I guarantee you that your portfolio is going to be so much more better.
Yeah, that's definitely a good advice. Another question that was asked about hiring was, would you reach out to an HR, or would you reach out to a designer even after you have the information that they both are responsible for making the decision?
I would reach out to both. There's nothing wrong reaching out to a designer, as long as you keep your emails very focused. Like if you're reaching out to an HR person, it needs to be a little bit more formal, and you need to have if there's a job ID, or if there's a requirement thing that was listed, or where it was listed, right? I see a lot of people missing that. Like I would put a job post on Dribble, I would put a job post on Coreflot, but there'd be 2 separate ones. But like when you send it back, that's the attention to detail that I actually look at. If you actually have that in your portfolio, saying, hey, I saw this on Coreflot and I'm applying because it interests me. I saw this on Dribble and I'm looking at this. The HR knows which one to go, because there'll be different hiring managers for different things. So let's say, for example, we're looking at an ID plus UX guy, and that'll be on Joel's team. He'll have something on Dribble. But Arun's looking for a very core ID guy, and he'll have that on Coreflot, or he'll have that on Behance. Or he'll probably send it out to something like Core 77 or a Design Wanted blog. Who'll put it out, right? So actually figuring out all those details and putting it in, if you're contacting the HR. But if you're contacting a designer who's responsible, you could be like, hey, what do you think the standard is? What could be, do you think my portfolio matches the requirement and all that? But then you could also ask the HR what the timeline is you could get a reply from, right? So you need to make that distinction then and there as to what kind of questions you're going to ask this person versus this person, because the designer usually won't know the time frame. It's usually the HR who knows the time frame as to when a positive reply comes from a decision maker, right? So if you're just hounding the designer, you're just going to lose points at that time. So you just have to be a little bit informed. I'm not saying everybody would know that. That's the reason why I was trying to convey all this stuff. Like, for example, there's so many times we've had confusions where we didn't have a resume. And if you don't have a resume, right, the HR just doesn't process it through the hiring system. Like we have a software wherein every single person's thing goes and people write in stuff and put comments on there, and then finally if it gets into a hiring thing, it goes through that funnel. And just because there's no resume, that software just didn't process out in people at all, because it was all embedded within a portfolio. So that's kind of why I would say make that distinction. Always have And I've gotten applications like that where there's a resume and there's a separate portfolio. But what I'm saying is, if you've sent a separate resume, just take it off your portfolio.
Yeah. Cool. Talk to us also about the difference between your approaches when you make a PDF portfolio versus making a website or even uploading to Behance, and maybe also include a little bit of social media in there, because that seems to be the new space that it's being populated by design work.
Definitely. So if you actually look at our examples, I think that's the perfect one, what I was referring to. So if you look at our Behance, it doesn't have a huge amount of text in there. It's a very visual kind of thing that just goes, the whole point of having a Behance thing is it's just pure visual stuff that we want to put in there. We're not trying to convince people that we're very good at solving problems. But if you go to our website, right, there's a lot of reasoning behind why we did this. There's a lot of text talking about, okay, this is what we want to try and solve. This is the context to it. Here's the research part of it. And then there's hyperlinks also to each of those research ones where we've done in-depth research, right? So what I'm trying to say is take that same example and apply it to a portfolio. So imagine in your previous question, you were talking to me about how do I condense this into 20 pages, right? So if you have certain things in a portfolio and you have this really in context image of a person, right? And you can always put a hyperlink down there saying, like, if you want to know more about the research here, click here. It could lead you to that. So if a person's really interested, if that person is looking for somebody who's in a research role at that point in time, he's going to click that, right? And you can use softwares like HubSpot, and you can use softwares like there's a couple more. I have a list. I can put that out at some point in time. It'll even tell you that this person clicked on this link and he's interested in it. So you know, and it's free. It's not charged. So at that point, you can understand that, oh, you know what, this person's actually interested in my research work. So I have a better chance. So in your interview, you could actually keep that focus on research. So basically, it's like, I don't know if you guys have, in Bangalore, we have something called puffs. It's like this layered pastry. So your portfolio is very similar to that layered pastry. You got to keep it in layers. You show your basic content, but then you have layers and layers of information that you can lead. And it's similar to a website, right? Like, so you have backlinks, you have people going somewhere else. It's all based on interest, and like it's basically you navigating that through this thing of like this user experience framework that you built. So I would definitely look into that a lot, which could probably help help people out in that.
Let's say everything goes well for somebody who's applying. He gets a reply saying, okay, good job. We are looking to get somebody on board as an intern. What happens next? I'm guessing an interview. Do you want to talk a little bit about the process after you, let's say, get lucky and get a positive?
Yeah, so the first step is you're going to get through a whole bunch of resumes and portfolios, and that's basically going to be like your, it's a breeze through selection of stuff. It's again a numbers game, right? So the portfolio is good. First 10 pages you get through, and you're in this one folder of shortlisted applicants. Now, after the applicants are shortlisted, obviously there's another round which goes through a discussion point of like whether if you've got like 50 people shortlisted, right? It's a huge number to do 50 interviews. So it's going to come down to 10 at some point in time. So at that point in time, there will be certain requirements of the job, and it's listed in the job requirement. You can actually read that. If you read the job requirement, in most point of time, it's there. There are certain 4 or 5 different things that are saying you should be good at this, you should be good at this, this. So there's an evaluation that happens where it's a rating system. At least we do that. We have a rating system of 1 to 10, and we kind of rate that person saying like this one's good at this and this. So if you get past that and you get to the 10, that's when you get actually onto a phone interview where, that's when the HR talks to you and she or he identifies basically your attitude, whether you're going to fit into the studio, whether you're a psycho, if you've got mental issues, all that stuff. And they make sure that you're good with the design interview. That's when the next part is when the design interview happens. And that's when they go through your portfolio and ask questions about how you came about this. Why did you do this? And probably like at some point we do tests. We give you a very simple exercise. We don't get a whole project done. It's just like an hour or a 45-minute test where we tell you, hey, this is a problem. In front of a sketch and show us how you're going to do it. Right? It's also a pressure test of how well you can handle it. Because there are interns who've actually presented to clients. So we don't keep you in some dark basement at any point in time. So we test that ability. We want to know if you can talk, if you can hold your ground in front of a client. So that there's some tests that run through, and then if you clear that, there's an approval or a appointment letter that goes out.
Yeah, I think this is useful for people who have almost never had the chance to work. I feel in India, and us Indians don't really get the chance to work in even cafes and bars that some of the Westerners get after their high school or after they're 18. So for us, it becomes like a very big transition from the life or mid-college life, and then joining an industry where you often hear feedback saying that, oh, I learned more in my internship than at my job, or at my college, right? And just maybe just talking more about how does one approach a college versus an internship, and what are the things, because of course there's the academic side that you gain the knowledge, you have the skills, you start developing your skills, but what are the expectations as you have become an intern, or let's say you got to that next step first day, and then you're going to be there for 6 months. What are the expectations, and how can somebody potentially become successful through that internship?
I think I would definitely put this in this way. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with this machine in a workshop. There's this pounder that just keeps pounding at all times, and there's a lever near your leg. So when you keep pressing it, it just keeps pounding. So if you're shaping something, especially like sheet metal, you just kind of go through that.
Yeah.
That's what I would call school is, right? It's the pounder. It just keeps pounding you. It's basically you building skills. So the expectation in school is, just get really good at the basic stuff, like idea generation, your 3D skills, your rendering skills, and observation is very important in school because you have so much time at that point, right? Like, so if you look at certain things and you can pick out, okay, this is good. Akshay Burke is there because so he was really good at figuring out spelling mistakes. That guy had an insane ability to figure out spelling mistakes in anywhere. So not useful for design, but I'm just saying that's an example.
Oh, it is. I can tell it is super useful for designers.
So we had I was reviewing that and stuff like that. So I would pick that out, but he used to pick that out. Now I always thought damn man, put that stuff into your sketch, or put that stuff in your thing. So I feel in school the expectations are for you to hone your skills a lot, right? And the analogy is that it's a pounder thing. It's more like an effort thing that you put in. But what is expected in an internship or a job is more like a wire cutter. Sorry, other discipline guys, I don't know if you guys can relate to this. So there's this hot wire that you run a piece of foam through and you can shape it. And it's not easy. It's very hard and very tough to kind of shape things out, especially if you've done speed form projects. Everybody, I think you'll relate to what I'm saying. And that's what an internship is, because at that point of time, you're expected to know the basics and what, when people come into an internship, and I've interviewed people who talked about previous internships, and they're like, oh, the senior designer gave me a sketch, and then I just took it into 3D and I modeled it, and I gave it back to him. That doesn't convey anything. That's not the expectation. The expectation, at least for me, is the reason I hire interns is fresh perspectives. I mean, we've been in the industry for so long. We have this same thing. You're kind of in this, the horse kind of thing. You're just going in one line. So when new interns come in, we expect people to challenge us and come up with crazy ideas and say what if this was there? What if this? What if that? Maybe we could do it this way. So that's kind of the expectation for the internship. But in general, in the industry, the expectation is that when you get into the internship, it's kind of like a precursor to your job. So that means that you really need to have your skills at the best level that you can be. So if you're in school, video games, movies, all that shit is good, but get your skills up and ready.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, it is a similar story to me as well. I felt such a big shift when I first went for an internship, and that too, the pressure was so high because I was leaving India and traveling overseas, and there was that little bit of confidence in me. Yes, I can sketch, and yes, I can make 3D models. But when you're in an internship, all of that goes away. It's more about can you be a designer, right?
Yeah. And you get insane requests too, hey, can you just go and quickly make this prototype? Oh, by the way, also, mock up this thing. Can you send this to the factory and tell them in a PPT? So it's like you're juggling through so many things. And if you haven't done this in school, right? Like if you haven't had that pressure situation in school, if you had a very smooth thing, yeah, the internship's gonna jolt you. And that's when you get these comments. I learned so much in 3 months of an internship than my 4 years in school. So it just tells you that that education part has not been very nicely defined, or you've had a very easy ride in school, right? So very interesting. My first job at Quirky, right? Like so, I went in again, very new. I had 4 years of work experience, but I still went in, and there was this other engineer, and he had experience in OXO and everything. And the founder comes in. It was a very small operation when I joined. I was the first industrial designer there, and then it grew into this massive behemoth of a thing. And you have a lot of people online, like there's this other guy and all that, like really famous. He became very famous on Instagram, so he worked at Quirky and all that stuff. So they had a very good team. I went in and this guy, the founder, says, I want to do 7 products in 7 days.
Oh, damn.
So every day, by the end of the day, I want to see a product fully modeled out, fully rendered, show me the idea, and show me its manufacturing. And it's like, you can't say no because that's the first day on the job, and you're like, okay. But it's like, it blows you away because you can't expect it. The internship is a little weird. It just, it's tough. It's tough. So if you've not had that pressure initially in school where you're used to like tight deadlines and presenting, that's going to be very tough.
Cool. Let's take a couple more specific questions and then we'll move towards the end of the session. So firstly, thanks for everybody who's still hanging out with us. That's awesome that you could do this on a Sunday. Just want to bring in some of the questions that popped into the chat. Should all the projects go all the way into final prototype and validation? I think this is more valuable for industrial designers.
No, absolutely. And that's what I have an issue with in terms of portfolios is you don't need to take it to the final end, right? Like, so it's not like you have to have an end. It's not a movie. Every single thing doesn't have to end where the hero kind of marries the heroine and then flowers fall and there's a whole, the sun rises and there's a rainbow at the end of the day. No, it doesn't have to be that. That's the whole thing I talk about projects also. Like your project needs to have a certain intent of what you're trying to convey in the overall thing. So if you're trying to convey that you're very good at prototyping or you solved a certain problem in a certain way, right? That could be the project and that could be what is showing. If you want to show the whole thing, again, link it to your website or link it to your Behance and let people go through the whole thing there. But like on your portfolio, you don't really have to do that. It's not required when you show a full project.
Cool. Another specific question, which I think even design studios face: how do you show something that's governed by NDA or any sort of restrictions on what you can show?
So NDAs are very tricky. Either you can wait for it to kind of like expire according to the agreement you've signed and then showcase it. But then the client might not like that because it's a courtesy thing. You have to like write to them and ask them saying like, hey, I want to put this on there, and that's the reason why I work as part of my marketing thing, and I want to show it to everybody and put it on my website. So one thing that's very important that we do is way before we even start the project, we have something called a portfolio clause that goes into the contract, which really talks about our overall thing. We don't do any marketing overall, like paying for ads and stuff like that and things like that. But then just putting our work out there is very important to us. So we talk to the client openly about it and tell him that this is something that we do. So and obviously every project has a negotiation at some point of time. So we leverage that negotiation to this clause and say like, we'll give you a discount, but you should let us put up this and this and this. So of course, you can't go and put up everything, right? You can't put up a mechanism. You can't put up all the 60 odd sketch and ideas that you put in there. You can put up stuff that's related to the final concept and show the process there. Again, there's a fine line there that you need to tread as well. But I would suggest that if you have an NDA project, make sure you set the expectation from day one that you're going to actually put it online. Talk to the client very openly about it, very straightforward. Don't request, don't put please, can I do this, sir? No. We're going to put this on. It's a marketing expense. We're doing this. It's going to help me get new projects. That's the reason why I'm reducing my cost for you. and things like that. And if you are not getting paid for it and you're still on an NDA, you're shit out of luck. You should never have taken that deal. So
cool. That's a good way to put it. I also want to share a little bit of my experience. There's two funny stories. One where me putting up the project sort of got my client features on websites and just get the word around. And secondly, there's another story where I was under the NDA, but the NDA exists, but the company doesn't anymore. So like the company failed so bad.
So that's you got to read something called the termination clause in there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Termination clause is still part of that. Yeah, you'll still be in trouble.
Exactly. So I mean, it's just a tricky situation because I'm like, okay, now the company doesn't exist. These guys are all working somewhere else. Anyway, okay. Last question for the evening. Pretty simple one. What do you think about showcasing awards and your successes in your portfolio? Does that small little logo help? Does that little feature on XYZ websites help?
To be honest with you guys, design awards clients really don't give two hoots about it. They just don't care, especially if the client is a cost-conscious client, right? So for them, at the end of the day, it's just a certain budget they're trying to get. But if you'll ask me from my perspective, I'm actually writing a blog online. There's the title and everything is on the Analogy website. I just haven't had time to write it. But I honestly think design awards matter in a huge way. It's more like a validation of your work through industry professionals. And more than that, it's a confidence building thing for you as a designer. And it's very important for a designer because there are very few occasions that your work gets appreciated, whether it's your peers, or whether it's even colleagues, because nobody's got time to say like, hey, you did a good job, man. That was a good project. Nobody's got time, right? So it's so important to get that design award. It boosts your confidence. It gives you that kind of like the positive hormones, and you kind of like yes, I did that. You know what? That was my work, and that's very important for a designer, I feel. From a client point of view, again, it depends on the kind of client. If the client's very innovation based and they have an appreciation for design awards, then like something like a red dot, yes, you definitely, like we've had conversations that when we won the red dot this year and certain clients are like, you have a red dot? Oh, that's amazing. And there's some things like, what is a red dot? I don't know what a red dot is. So you have those kinds of clients. So it just
what about a student studio interaction with the awards? Like if a student wins.
It matters a lot. It would definitely matter a lot. And it's not just us, any studio with the award or a feature matters a lot. So if you, as a student, I definitely think you should get featured on blogs, not just social media as such. Social media, I feel like just getting featured with a few carousel posts on Instagram really doesn't take you a long way. But let's say a Course 77 or a Dizzy or like something like a blog that is respected and read by a lot of people will give you that reach. I definitely think those features matter in your job, in your internship or your job application. It matters a lot.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks for all your insights and your answers. I mean, I can certainly say that I learned a lot, and I'm sure it's the same with everybody. We've been at it for quite some while, so again, I want to thank everybody who's still up and chilling out with us. And thanks, Vyas, for taking out the time. This was super, super insightful and amazing. Just for the guys who are here, you guys know where to find Vyas. He's Analogy on our Discord, as well as he can be found on his Instagram channels. Do you want to talk about where we can reach out to you?
Yeah, definitely. I think the best way to reach out to me would be the Discord channel. I've got that as a browser open all the time. And it's easier to kind of answer questions there also. But you can also DM me on Instagram on my design account, not my personal one. The design account is DesignWillSkill, WILLSKILL. So you can just reach out to me there as well. It's not a private account, so that would be the two best channels to reach out.
Perfect. Well, that's all, guys. We'll have this recorded, put up sometime soon. Tell your friends about Design WIP. Tell your friends about the Discord. So also don't think of this as a one-time session. This is gonna keep happening as more and more people come in, more questions are being asked, more expectations are put on us, or not us, but let's say the community. the reason for the community's existence. So don't take it as a one-off. This is going to keep happening. Your questions will still be regarded and discussed in the future. But in the meantime, hang out, chill with us on Discord, and we'll see you next time. All right, guys. Take care. Thanks, Vyas. Thanks, everybody. See you later.
Yes. Hang out at the 4 a.m. sessions.